Welcome to Restoria, your cozy corner for gentle bedtime stories. My name is James and I'll be your host tonight. Every night, we bring you peaceful tales designed to calm your mind and help you drift off into a deep, restful sleep. So snuggle in, close your eyes, and let the story begin. The story tonight is called The Lantern Walk of Whispering Wood. Chapter 1. The Night of Soft Leaves. The sun in Moon Hollow had a way of saying goodbye that made you want to whisper. It dipped low behind the treetops, its warm orange light spilling across the cottages like honey poured slowly over toast. The breeze stirred just enough to rustle the last golden leaves on the branches, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called softly, as if clearing its throat before the night began. In a small house on the edge of the village, a boy named Milo stood barefoot on the wooden porch, holding something very precious, his lantern. It was shaped like the moon. Round, pale, and just slightly wobbly, it had taken Milo 3 afternoons to finish. He had covered a paper frame with layers of rice paper, brushing it gently with a mix of glue and stardust, glitter at least. That's what his grandmother called it. Inside sat a little candle, waiting to be lit. Tonight was the Lantern Walk. Once a year, when autumn was at its quietest, the villagers of Moon Hollow gathered in the square with their handmade lanterns and followed the old path through Whispering Wood. No songs were sung, no bells were rung. It was a walk for dreaming not with words, but with wonder. Milo called his grandmother from inside. "Are your shoes by the door?" "Yes," Milo said, though he wasn't sure they were. He was too busy watching the sky turn a deeper blue. She stepped out beside him, wearing a long wool shawl and holding her own lanterna, soft, cat-shaped globe with painted eyes closed in sleep. Milo loved it. It had a way of glowing that made you feel cozy just by looking at it. "Do you remember the rule?" she asked, smiling gently. Milo nodded. "No talking, just walking." "And why do we walk?" "To help the forest remember the dreams of the people who pass through." "Very good." She lit her lantern with a match, shielding the flame from the breeze with her hand. Then she leaned down and lit Milo's, whispering, "There you are, Moonlight Boy." Together, they walked to the village square. Already, families were gathering. Lanterns shaped like stars, animals, and blossoms floated on the breeze, glowing warm and steady. No one spoke much, only a few soft greetings, and the occasional giggle from a child too young to whisper. Milo looked around, wide-eyed. He'd never been allowed to stay up this late before. The world felt different now, slower, like everything was holding its breath. The mayor, a tall man with a lantern shaped like a pine cone, gave a quiet nod. And then, like the hush of snow falling, the crowd began to move. The path into Whispering Wood was already lit, with the first amber glows of lanterns ahead. Milo held his grandmother's hand and followed the line of light into the trees. As they passed beneath the first arch of branches, the air shifted. It was cooler here, filled with the scent of moss, bark, and something else, something dreamlike. The forest welcomed them with silence. Milo could hear the tiniest things now. The crunch of leaves beneath boots, the flutter of wings high above, the gentle creak of tree limbs stretching. His lantern bobbed with each step, casting little circles of moonlight on the ground. All around him, the lanterns floated like sleepy fireflies, swaying with their holders' steps. Fireflies joined them too, blinking softly in the dark. Some even drifted beside Milo's lantern, as if curious about this small boy and his glowing moon. He glanced up at his grandmother. Her eyes were calm, fixed ahead. The cat lantern purred silently in the air beside her. Deeper and deeper they walked. And that's when Milo saw it, a fox curled in a tree hollow just off the path. It wasn't startled. It blinked once, then tucked its nose under its tail and went back to sleep. He wanted to tell his grandmother, but he remembered the rule. No talking, just dreaming. So he carried the fox in his heart instead. A few minutes later, he saw mushrooms glowing faintly near the roots of an old oak. They formed tiny constellations, little clusters of light that seemed to match the stars above. He passed a stream with water clear as glass, and for a moment he thought he saw faces there, not reflections, but wishes. Little flickers of longing, like candle flames that had taken shape. Each step felt like it took him further into a story. His eyelids grew heavy, not from tiredness, but from peace. It was like the whole forest was a lullaby, and he was slowly turning its pages. When they reached a small clearing, the walkers paused. A river flowed through the trees ahead, slow and quiet, like a ribbon of night. At the river's edge waited little wooden rafts. Milo knew what came next. One by one, each person placed their lantern on a raft. They bent low, set it gently down, and gave it a push. The lanterns floated away. Like stars falling sideways, they drifted down the river, bobbing gently in the current. The light from them shimmered on the water's surface, casting gold onto the trunks of trees and the faces of those who watched. Milo stepped forward. He placed his moon-shaped lantern on a raft. For a moment, it looked back at Hemor. Maybe that was his imagination, and then it sailed away. He didn't feel sad. He felt light. His grandmother wrapped her shawl around his shoulders, and he leaned into her side. They turned to go home, following the path back through the sleeping woods. And somewhere between one step and the next, Milo closed his eyes. He never noticed exactly when he fell asleep, only that the whole night had felt like a dream he was lucky enough to walk through. Chapter 2: The Lantern That Stayed Awake. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains of Milo's room like a soft yawn. He blinked slowly, unsure if he was waking from a dream or still in one. His blanket was tangled around him, and Button, his stuffed fox, had fallen to the floor. For a moment, he wasn't sure where he was. And then he remembered the lanterns, the glowing mushrooms, the floating stars on the river. Milo sat up quickly, rubbing his eyes. "Grandma," he called. She was already in the kitchen, stirring something that smelled like apples and cinnamon. "Good morning, Moonlight Boy," she said with a smile. He padded into the room, hair tousled and eyes wide. "Was that real?" Grandma raised one eyebrow gently. Was what real? The walk, the fox in the tree, the mushrooms, the lanterns on the river. She set 2 bowls of oatmeal on the table and sat beside him. "What do you think?" Milo looked down, thinking. It felt like a dream, but Button was still in my arms when I woke up. "Then maybe it was both," Grandma said. "Some dreams you carry with you when you wake." Milo ate quietly, the memory of the river still floating behind his eyes. After breakfast, he ran to the porch, half hoping to see his moon-shaped lantern waiting there. Of course, it was gone, gently carried downstream with the others. But just as he was turning to go back inside, something caught his eye. Tucked in the grass near the porch step was a tiny feather. It shimmered faintly, like it had been dipped in starlight. He picked it up, heart fluttering. "You stayed awake," he whispered. He tucked the feather into his pocket and felt it warm against his hand. Maybe the walk wasn't just once a year. Maybe the forest remembered, just like Grandma said. That day passed quietly. Milo helped gather apples, swept leaves from the porch, and read 3 chapters of a book about a ship that sailed the clouds. But all the while, he kept thinking about the lantern walk. When night came again, he was surprised to find himself wide awake. The stars blinked above the rooftops, the wind whispered through the leaves, and somewhere, far off, a single chime rang. He slipped out of bed. This time, he didn't tell Grandma. Not because it was a secret, but because it felt like something he needed to do on his own. With Button under one arm and the feather still in his pocket, he tiptoed down the stairs and out the front door. The village was asleep, but the forest wasn't. Whispering wood shimmered at the edge of the path. The trees swayed gently in the moonlight, and Milo could almost hear them sigh. He walked slowly, barefoot now, his steps barely brushing the earth. The leaves beneath him made no sound. And then, just ahead, a flicker. A light. It wasn't bright like a lantern. It was softer, smaller, like a firefly with a long memory. Milo followed it. The light bobbed ahead, always just out of reach. He passed the same hollow tree where the fox had curled up the night before, but it was empty now. He passed the mushrooms, still glowing faintly, though their patterns had changed. Then he reached the river. It looked different in the moonlight, wider, perhaps, more still. The rafts were gone, but something shimmered beneath the surface. Milo knelt and looked closer. The moon-shaped lantern. It was there, resting in the reeds near the shore. Its light was faint, pulsing gently, as if breathing. He reached out carefully, fingers brushing its surface. It was warm. He lifted it from the water. The paper was wet, but unbroken. The candle inside still flickered. "You stayed awake," he said again, voice barely a whisper. The wind curled around him. And then a voice loud, not frightening, rose from the trees. You left a wish inside, it said. Some dreams wait to be finished. Milo turned, but saw no one, only trees and mist. Still, he wasn't afraid. He carried the lantern back along the path, back past the mushrooms and the hollow tree, back to his porch, where he sat cross-legged with Button beside him and the lantern glowing softly between them. He didn't try to understand it. He only listened to the night and watched the stars blink in time with the candles flicker. And when sleep finally came, it came gently. The feather in his pocket glowed once, and then was still. Chapter 3: The Path Between Trees. Milo woke with the feather still in his pocket, and the memory of moonlight lingering behind his eyes. For the rest of the week, he kept the lantern hidden beneath his bed. He wasn't sure why it wasn't a secret. Not really, but it felt like something that needed quiet. Some nights, he'd peek under the bed just to see if the glow had returned. And once, it had. Just for a moment. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat in a jar. His grandmother didn't ask, but once, as she tucked him in, she smiled at him a little longer than usual and said, "Some lights are meant to find their own time." Milo nodded. He didn't have the words yet, but he understood. Then, one evening, the wind changed. It blew softly through town, not harsh or cold, but curious, like it was looking for someone. Leaves scattered in careful spirals. The trees in whispering wood leaned toward the village, their branches curling like fingers. Milo sat on the porch steps with Button in his lap, watching the sky darken. That's when he saw it. A path. Not the path from the lantern walk, but something else. It had not been there the night before. A new trail between the trees, lined not with footprints, but with light small flickers that hovered just above the ground. Like the forest had opened its eyes and blinked a message. Milo didn't hesitate. He ran inside, grabbed the lantern from under his bed, and held it close. It felt warm, awake. Then he slipped outside, down the porch steps, and toward the glowing path. He didn't need to tell anyone. Some moments are meant for walking without asking. The new path wound gently through the trees, deeper than any he had ever walked. There were no sounds, no birds, no branches creaking, only the quiet swish of his feet and the steady glow of the lantern. And then, ahead, a clearing. It wasn't large, just wide enough for a circle of stones and a low bench carved from the trunk of a fallen tree. Hanging above were lanterns not handmade, but grown, it seemed, from the trees themselves. They pulsed with slow golden light, like memories breathing. In the center stood a figure, a child, no older than Milo. Their hair was silver, not gray, but moon-colored, and their eyes glowed softly like firefly wings. They held a lantern shaped like a leaf, glowing from within. "You came," the child said. Milo stepped into the clearing. "Did you call me?" The other child nodded. "The path does, when a dream isn't finished." Milo looked down at his lantern. It flickered, then steadied. "What's your name?" he asked. "I'm the lantern keeper," the child said. "But only when someone needs me. Is this a dream?" The lantern keeper tilted their head. "Does it matter?" Milo smiled. "Not really." They sat together on the stone bench, lanterns between them. "Why did mine come back?" Milo asked. "Because you left a wish inside," the keeper said. "And wishes are like seeds. They wait until the right night to bloom." Milo held the lantern closer. "Can I finish the wish?" "Yes," the keeper said. "But you must walk farther." Milo looked beyond the clearing. A faint path stretched out, lit by tiny firefly lights. "I'm ready," he said. The keeper stood. "Then, go. And don't worry, I'll keep the path behind you." Milo stepped forward, lantern held high. Each step was slower now, not because he was afraid, but because the world was so quiet and rich. He saw more glowing mushrooms, a branch with crystals hanging like icicles, and a patch of moss that smelled like his grandmother's bread. Then he saw it. A tree. Not just any tree. A tall one, with bark like dark velvet and leaves that shimmered silver blue. Hanging from its branches were dozens of tiny lanterns, each with a name carved on the side. Milo walked up and found one glowing slightly brighter than the rest. It had his name. He reached up, touched it gently. It pulsed. The wish inside him stirred not loud, but real. It wasn't for toys or adventures. It was for peace. For the quiet that helped thoughts find their way home. For moments that didn't hurry. For more nights like the walk. He didn't say it out loud, but the tree heard. The lantern pulsed once more and went still. Milo turned back, heart light. And there, at the edge of the path, the lantern keeper waited, smiling. "Your dream has roots now," they said. "It will grow." Milo nodded. "Will I see you again?" The keeper stepped back into the trees. "When the wind changes." And just like that, the path faded behind him, folding into the forest like a forgotten thought. But Milo didn't forget. He walked home with his lantern tucked against his chest, button under one arm, and the feather in his pocket. And in the sky above, a new star blinked. Perhaps it had been there all along. Chapter 4: The River of Echoes. The next morning, Milo awoke before the sun. Light hadn't touched the rooftops yet, and the town was still deep in its slumber. But Milo sat up in bed with the strange certainty that the forest was already awake. He slipped quietly out of bed, tucked button under one arm, and pulled on his sweater, which still smelled faintly of last night's air. In his pocket, the feather waited, soft and silver as ever. This time, he didn't take the lantern. He didn't need to. Something inside him glowed just enough. The walk to Whispering Wood was easy now, like the path had learned his footsteps. The forest greeted him with a rustle, not loud, but full of memory. The air was cool and gentle, like someone drawing the curtains before telling a bedtime story. This time, there was no floating trail of light snow child with leaf-shaped lanterns. Just the sound of water. Milo followed it. He walked past the glowing mushrooms, now dim in the early morning shadows, past the tree hollow where the fox no longer slept, though he saw paw prints in the soft soil. The air smelled like moss, rain, and the beginning of something. Then, through the thinning trees, he saw the river again. But it wasn't the same river where they had set their lanterns afloat. This river was wider, smoother, darker. Its surface looked like a mirror made of nighttime, and as Milo stepped closer, he saw his own reflection staring back at him. Except it wasn't just his face. It was his thoughts. They shimmered just beneath the surface. Images of the lantern walk, the silver-haired keeper, the wish he had made. He saw Button's stitched smile. He saw his grandmother brushing the hair behind his ear. He saw the moon-shaped lantern pulsing in the reeds. The river didn't ripple. It listened. Milo sat on the bank, cross-legged, watching the water. Then, something unexpected happened. The river began to hum. It wasn't a song, not exactly, but more like a sound made of feelings. It echoed softly around him, like the lullaby of the forest itself. The echoes weren't voices, but they carried words. I hope they remember me. I miss her laugh. Please let this be enough. Milo's eyes widened. The river was full of wishes. Not just his everyone's. Old ones. Long forgotten ones. Ones too quiet to say aloud. And then, he heard his own. I want to feel calm, even when things are fast. He hadn't said it aloud, but there it was, floating in the water like a leaf. The river shimmered gently in reply. Milo closed his eyes. He listened. The hum wrapped around him like a story, and the forest seemed to lean closer, the trees creaking in agreement. The river didn't carry his wish away. It held it, kept it, echoed it back so he wouldn't forget. When he opened his eyes, he saw something strange. Across the river, dozens, maybe hundreds of tiny lanterns drifted just above the water. Not on it, not in it, but above it. Each was different. Some shaped like leaves, stars, feathers, cups, moons. Some glowed gold, others soft blue or deep green. And in the center of them all, the moon-shaped lantern he thought he had lost. It pulsed once. Milo stood slowly. The river didn't call him to cross. It didn't need to. It had shown him what was waiting, and that was enough. He bowed, just a little, as if thanking it. Then he turned, Button held close, and walked the same path back through the forest. When he reached the edge of town, the sun had begun to rise. The rooftops glowed like brushed gold. Smoke curled from chimneys. Somewhere, a bell rang softly for morning bread. Milo walked quietly through the village. When he reached his porch, his grandmother was waiting. She didn't say anything, just opened her arms and let him fall into them. You heard the river? she asked after a long silence. Milo nodded into her shawl. She kissed the top of his head. Good. That means it hurt you too. That night, when Milo went to bed, he placed the silver feather on his windowsill. He didn't tuck it away. He let it watch the sky. And in his dreams, the river hummed again, quiet, endless, kind, full of echoes, and listening still. Chapter 5. The Sleepy Hour. In Moon Hollow, there was a time of evening that people simply called the Sleepy Hour. It wasn't marked by clocks or bells, and no one announced it, but everyone felt it. It came just after the last dish was dried and the final page of a bedtime story turned. The lanterns in the windows dimmed to a warm flicker, and the world outside seemed to tiptoe. That evening, Milo sat at the kitchen table, painting. His grandmother had spread out sheets of thick paper and little bowls of water and color. The table was covered with brushstroke shapes like falling stars and drifting leaves. Milo didn't say much as he worked. His brush moved slowly, patiently. I think I'm painting a dream before it happens, he said. Grandma looked over and smiled. That's the best kind of painting. His picture showed a hill beneath a deep blue sky, and on the hill, tiny lights floated above the grass like gentle thoughts. One looked like a cat, another a sailboat. One, of course, looked like a moon. As he painted, the familiar hush of the sleepy hour began to drift through the house. Even Button, resting nearby, seemed to blink slower, as if caught in a yawn that never quite finished. Milo put down his brush. I think the woods are calling again. Grandma didn't argue. She only walked to the cupboard and pulled out his wool coat. Take this, she said, tucking the feather back into his pocket. And take your time. Outside, the cobblestones gleamed faintly from a light rain earlier that evening. Clouds brushed across the moon like sleepy sighs, and the trees at the edge of Whispering Wood shimmered with quiet. Milo entered without hesitation. The path was darker tonight, but not unfriendly. Shadows stretched long and lazy, like they too were settling in. His steps were slow, matching the rhythm of the forest. He passed the hollow tree, now glowing faintly from within. Fireflies hovered near the entrance, as if guarding a sleeping secret. Further in, the mushrooms had returned to full glow, their constellation shifting once again, this time shaped like a lantern. Milo smiled. You remember me, he whispered. The forest, of course, said nothing, but something answered. Far off, deeper in, a single chime rang. Not loud, not bright, just steady. He followed it. The path turned softer, more like a dream than a trail. His feet left no sound behind. The trees began to thin, and ahead he saw a rise of earth covered in moss and ringed with willow trees that wept silver leaves. At the top was a circle of stones. The chime came from its center, and there sat the lantern keeper. Their hair shimmered more brightly tonight, like the moon had touched it. They were humming. "You found the sleepy hour," they said as Milo approached. "I didn't look for it," he replied. "I think it found me." The keeper nodded. "That's how it works." They stood and motioned to the moss beside them. Milo sat, and the forest around them grew even quieter, as if every leaf and branch was listening. "Do you know why the lantern walk happens only once a year?" the keeper asked. Milo shook his head. "Because the forest doesn't need reminding very often. But people do." "Reminding of what?" The keeper smiled. "That peace doesn't need permission. That quiet is something you carry, not something you wait for." Milo thought about that. Then he asked, "Can I carry it forever?" The keeper reached out and tapped the pocket where the feather rested. "You already are." They sat together in silence. The chime rang once more, and this time, Milo felt it not in his ears, but in his chest, like a note that belonged there. As the night stretched on, the keeper stood. "It's almost time to return, but before you do, there's something you should see." They led Milo to the edge of the clearing, where a small stream ran between stones, glowing faintly with reflected stars. Floating there were tiny lanterns, but these didn't carry candles. They carried dreams. Milo leaned closer and saw them his own dreams and others. Wishes, thoughts, hopes, some from people he knew, some from people long gone, some that hadn't yet been dreamed. "They float here until they're ready to be remembered," the keeper said. Milo closed his eyes. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. And when he opened them, the keeper was gone. The clearing faded. The stream turned to mist. The path behind him waited. Milo walked home slowly, the sleepy hours settling in his bones. When he climbed into bed, Button was already waiting. He curled beneath the blanket, Feather tucked beneath his pillow. And as he drifted off, a chime echoed softly through the air, own last whisper from the forest, telling him that sleep had arrived, and that dreams were listening. Chapter 6. The Lantern That Waited. The last morning of the autumn festival came quietly. The trees in Moon Hollow had turned the color of candlelight, and the air carried the scent of wood smoke and the faint sweetness of drying apples. Down in the village square, the townsfolk swept fallen leaves into slow-moving piles, and the last of the baked goods were wrapped in cloth and shared from neighbor to neighbor. But Milo wasn't in the square. He stood once more at the edge of Whispering Wood, Button in one hand, the silver feather in the other. He had slept soundly, with dreams soft as moss, and now he felt something inside him stir not restlessness, but readiness. Something had finished growing. The forest welcomed him as always, the leaves parting like curtains, the path unfolding like a familiar lullaby. He walked without lantern or light, trusting the hush around him to guide his feet. Today, the woods were brighter. Sunlight streamed through the branches in golden beams, lighting patches of mushrooms and moss with a morning glow. Even the trees seemed less sleepy, more awake, but still calm, still full of quiet. He passed the hollow tree, now empty but no longer lonely. He passed the spot where he'd first seen the River of Echoes, now a trickling stream with leaves floating gently on its surface. And then, ahead, the clearing. It looked just as he remembered the ring of stones, the moss-covered hill, the whispering willows leaning in like old friends with secrets to share. But something was different. In the center of the stones sat a lantern. Milo stepped closer. It was his. The moon-shaped lantern, dry and whole, sat on a small wooden raft tucked beside the roots of the central tree. Its paper had been patched with pressed leaves and stitched with threads of silver. The candle inside flickered, not with fire, but with something softer. Memory and hope. Tied to the side of the raft was a note, scrawled in looping letters. Some dreams take time to finish. When they're ready, they find their way back. Milo smiled. He placed the feather beside the lantern. Then, with careful fingers, he gave the raft a gentle push toward the water. The stream accepted it gladly, guiding it through the roots and into the larger river that curved just beyond the trees. Milo followed a few steps and watched as the lantern drifted into sunlight. It didn't float away quickly. It moved slowly, steadily, like it knew exactly where it was going. He stayed by the water's edge for a while, watching. Then, from behind him, a voice. "You kept the quiet well." Milo turned. The lantern keeper stood beneath one of the willow trees, not in their silver glow, but in a softer version, as if they too were ready for rest. Milo nodded. "I didn't try to. I just listened. That's all the forest ever asks." They walked side by side back toward the path, where the leaves swirled gently at their feet. "Will I come back?" Milo asked. "Only when you need to," the keeper said. "The lantern will wait." Milo looked up at the canopy of golden leaves. "I think I'll miss it. Then you'll carry it." The keeper replied. At the edge of the woods, the keeper stopped. Milo kept walking, and with each step, the sounds of the village returned: laughter, kettles whistling, doors creaking open, the scent of bread baking and the crispness of wind in his hair. He walked home slowly, heart full, pockets empty, but hands lighter somehow. That night, after the sun had gone, Milo stood at his window and looked out over Moon Hollow. The stars blinked overhead, and somewhere, far beyond the roofs and chimneys and curling smoke, he knew the lantern floated still, dreaming and waiting, just in case someone needed light to follow.